Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest half hour anywhere online today. Appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube. Coming up, it is Motivation Monday here on the Exam Room, and as our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign rolls on, I am so honored to be joined by a survivor and a thriver, someone now 2 decades in remission and doing her thing on a plant-based diet oh so well, and she's helping others along the way. To share her story with us today, Donna Green-Goodman is here. Thank you so very much for joining us, Donna. Can't wait to get your story. And Dr. Neal Barnard. Oh, man, I love that friendly face. And Dr. Neal Barnard also helping us kick off a new week. He's here with an eye-opening new study that every parent should hear. New data showing the danger dairy can pose to children even from the day they are born regarding asthma. Dr. Barnard, some staggering numbers. Really looking forward to getting into this with you.
Very important information, Chuck.
And Dr. Barnard also going to be looking at the way dairy and breast cancer are connected. So how does that affect a woman's risk of being diagnosed? We will find out during that conversation. And if you have a question for Dr. Barnard, go ahead and post that in the comments section now. We will be opening up the doctor's mailbag in just a little bit. So go ahead, post it there, or you can tweet that to us using the hashtag Exam Room Live. But first, let's get caught up on the latest happenings. Here are your health headlines for Monday, October 5th. 2020. With the president remaining hospitalized for COVID-19, the number of coronavirus infections in the U.S. now more than 7.4 million, with more than 130,000 cases being reported since Friday. And while hospitalizations are remaining consistent nationwide, deaths are down nearly 7% over the last week, with 209,000 Americans now having lost their lives. Experts believe that number could climb rapidly if infection rates continue to increase, however. The global death toll is at least 1,038,000. In other news, controlling blood sugar can improve brain function among people with diabetes. Those are important findings from LSU researchers who analyzed 1,100 participants from the Look Ahead or Action for Health and Diabetes study. The new research shows those who are overweight and lower blood sugar levels by losing weight and changing their diet and increasing the amount of exercise they get, they all saw improvements to their ability to think clearly, both learn and retain information. Interestingly, though, those who were obese also experienced improvements, but not to the same levels. Researchers concluding that may be a little bit of a too little, too late scenario for people whose weight had been a bigger issue for a greater length of time. Diabetes has previously been linked to dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And finally, expectant parents are going to want to listen to this one. Infants who are bottle-fed formula containing cow's milk are far more likely to develop asthma, according to new research. This study from Japan examined children from the day they were born in an effort to track their risk, which appears to increase even as they get older. And so to take a deeper look at the study, I want to bring in Dr. Neal Barnard. And Dr. Barnard, some interesting data here, right hot off of the presses, doing a head-to-head comparison of this dairy formula and mother's breast milk. So a couple of questions here for you. One, what exactly did researchers find? And then two, because we are in the middle of our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign, I also want to get your thoughts on breast cancer and dairy. I know that there's been a lot of research there as well, but let's go ahead and start with that study first. So can you walk us through that a little bit, what these researchers found?
Yeah, very important study. Here it is. It's from JAMA Network Open. It's just came out, and it's from a big research study in Tokyo, Japan, very well done study, where some people have argued that children should be given breast milk from mom, but the whole idea was if you also give them some cow's milk, that will help. Maybe it'll make them tolerate it better later in life, whatever. The researchers did a randomized trial. On the day the children were born, they were randomly assigned to either only breastfeeding from mom or breastfeeding from mom plus some cow's milk added to it. Not very much, just a little bit of cow's milk. And then they tracked the children as the years went by. And what they found was really striking. When you look at asthma, which, as you know, asthma is a vice around your lungs, affects a lot of kids. But the kids who get no cow's milk at all, just breast milk, 9.9% risk of developing asthma. The kids who were given the cow's milk along with breast milk, 17.9% risk. So it was nearly a doubling of asthma risk just by getting the cow's milk. Here's the deal. The cow's milk had to be given during the first 3 days of life. And then they were free to continue that trend. But our point is this, that our bodies are really designed to get milk from our own mother, who is our species, not from a different species. And we can have effectively a sensitization, or really the equivalent of an allergic reaction to milk from another species. It's not really a clear allergy, but it is a sensitization. So why are we using milk from a cow anyway? And if you ask people on the street, they'll say, well, cows give us calcium in their milk. But Mother Nature would say, wait a minute, cows don't make calcium. Calcium is an element in the earth that gets into grass, and the cow eats the grass, and that's where the calcium comes from, ending up in cow's milk. If you're eating green vegetables, hopefully not grass, but broccoli or kale or collards or Brussels sprouts, you'll get calcium in its normal source. So what's the problem? Well, the problem, number one, as we just saw, these proteins, I'm calling them allergenic, but sometimes the reactions we have to them is not strictly an allergy, it's just other kinds of sensitization. That's just for starters. In addition, you've got bad fat, and I guess people are aware of the saturated fat that's in milk. There's also a trace of trans fat, which is now banned in some areas. You can't put it in your French fry fryer, but there are traces of it in milk. There's lactose, sugar, and there are hormones. I just want to walk you through, just to say a sentence about each one. People think of bad fat, saturated fat, that's coming from bacon. Yeah, there is some in bacon, but that's not the main source. Source number one, dairy products. Meat is number two. And researchers in Chicago almost 20 years ago showed that people eating the most bad fat had double to triple the risk of Alzheimer's disease compared to people generally avoiding it. Once again, main source, dairy, second biggest source, meat. You want to avoid it to protect your brain, not only to protect your heart. The dairy sugar, lactose, if you can't digest it, this is a very common, it's not a condition, it's actually normal, lactose intolerance, you drink cow's milk and you get a bellyache because you can't break down the sugar and it ferments in your digestive tract and causes diarrhea. That's actually a good thing because that means you're not going to drink milk. But many whites, Caucasians, carry a mutation that allows them to digest cow's milk for a longer period of time because the infant enzyme lactase persists in their body for a longer period of time. That's not so good because that means that the lactase breaks the sugar down into galactose and glucose, and galactose appears to be toxic. How do we know this? Well, Dan Kramer at Harvard University did an interesting study. He looked at the decline in fertility in women between their late 20s and their late 30s. As you know, during that time period, your fertility is going to slack off a little bit. And Thailand, not a big dairying country, had a drop in fertility of about 25% during that time frame, between the late 20s and a woman's late 30s. Brazil, a little more dairy products, more rapid loss in fertility, about 50% during that time period. The US, big dairy country, 80% loss of fertility during that time frame. And if you put the other countries on the globe into this graph, the result is not perfect, but you see this strong trend that the more milk women drink, the more rapidly they lose fertility. Why? What we think is happening is that the galactose attacks the ovary and can kill off the oocytes. So if that's the case, could it also be linked to ovarian cancer risk? As you know, ovarian cancer is one of the ones that we really do a very bad job of diagnosing it because there's no lump that you can feel. There really isn't a test for it early on. This was a Swedish study back in 2004, and it really set the drumbeat that, yeah, milk is linked not just to fertility problems, but cancer risk too. In this forest plot, if we look at all the studies that looked at dairy and ovarian cancer. If the little black box is to the right of that central line, that means that milk was associated with increased ovarian cancer risk. And as you can see, the results are very consistent, just one exception. And lastly, so if we haven't talked you out of drinking milk yet, because of the allergenic proteins, the bad fat, the lactose sugar that leads to galactose, the hormones in it are a big problem. Cows are impregnated annually. When they're pregnant, they make estrogens and progesterone that gets into the milk, and there is no such thing as hormone-free milk. So who cares about that? Cancer researchers care about it. This came out earlier this year from the Adventist Health Study 2, and they looked at the risk of breast cancer at different levels of milk consumption. If you look along the horizontal axis there, going from no milk to a half a cup, 2 cups, 4 cups of milk per day, you see the breast cancer going just right up. And what we think is happening is the hormones that come from the cows get into your glass of milk, into your yogurt, into your cheese, into your butter, and those estrogens are a match for yours. They can enter the breast cells, causing them to convert into cancer cells, and then cause the cancer to progress more rapidly as well. So milk is for babies. Human milk is designed for human babies. Cow's milk is designed for calves. That's it. After the age of weaning, there is no requirement for any kind of milk, and there is never a requirement for humans to drink the milk of a cow. So there you have it, Chuck.
You know, it never ceases to amaze me every time that there's a study done on dairy, you know, just kind of the ill effects that it can have. And it always reminds me of your latest book, Your Body in Balance. So today, really, we've been focusing on fluid milk, but I know with dairy in particular, when it comes to eating a ton of that and cheese, just the way that can really just wreak havoc on a woman's hormones and also affect fertility, that is just, it blows me away, the stuff that you wrote about in your book.
Oh, well, thank you for mentioning that, Chuck. Yeah, I wrote Your Body in Balance, and we released it just before the pandemic came out. So we haven't talked about it a lot, but the idea is that hormones can really go haywire depending on what we eat. And cow's milk is one of the ways they can go wrong because of the estrogens that are in it. It drives all of the conditions that we just talked about, but also some really just common and almost mundane conditions: menstrual cramps, endometriosis, fertility issues. All of these are affected by food. The good news is that when you understand how to get your hormones back in balance, you have huge power. So I'm hoping that message will start to stick.
It's a great read, and I hope that people do get an opportunity to pick up a copy. I know you can head over to Amazon to pick that up. We also sell it over on pcrm.org. I mean, really just a phenomenal chapter. Dr. Barnard, stick with us here. Coming up in a few minutes, Motivation Monday, we're going to have Donna Green-Goodman with us to share her incredible story. But first, let's go ahead and open up the doctor's mailbag. And this is your opportunity, Dr. Barnard, to answer a viewer question. And today's question comes to us from Liz. It's another question about B12. How often do we get these B12 questions? They're always so interesting. But she's watching us on YouTube, Dr. Barnard, wants to know, how will I know if I'm actually low on vitamin B12? What symptoms should I be looking out for? And how frequently should I be getting my blood checked for B12?
Okay, that's a terrific question. Vitamin B12 is really needed for two things. It's needed for healthy blood. And so if you're low in B12, you could be anemic. But you may not discover that. You may not know it until you have a blood test and your doctor says what's going on. The other things, apart from the blood issues, are nerve issues. You need B12 for healthy nerves. And sometimes that's the first symptom: tingling, numbness, difficulty walking. And the problem is that the condition often has gone on for quite a while before a person develops symptoms, and they can end up being irreversible. But it is totally and completely preventable. It's preventable by taking a B12 supplement. There's B12 in every multiple vitamin you ever took, like Flintstones for kids or one a day for adults. But I encourage people to just go to the store and get a B12 supplement at the health food store or the drugstore, take the smallest dose they've got, and that's what you need. Now, most of the people who are B12 deficient will have one or another other underlying diagnosis. They may have acid stomach, so they're taking an acid blocker. They may have diabetes, so they're taking metformin. Those drugs interfere with B12 absorption. But you need B12. Everybody ought to supplement, especially for people on a vegan diet. Absolutely mandatory, but it's cheap, it's easy, and you do need it.
There you go. Dr. Barnard, appreciate your time, my friend.
Sure. Thank you, Chuck.
All right. If we didn't get to your question today, we will save it and try to get you an answer on an upcoming episode. So go ahead, keep on posting that in the comments section. Let's fill up that doctor's mailbag with as many questions as possible. We will try to get as many answers as possible in the coming days. You can also send them to us on Twitter at PCRM or at Chuck Carroll WLC. Just make sure that you use that hashtag Exam Room Live. And don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Barnard's latest book, Your Body in Balance. Okay, it is Monday, and that means that it is Motivation Monday here on the Exam Room Live as our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign rolls on. And my next guest has, in fact, beaten breast cancer. More than 20 years cancer-free now. The diagnosis forever changed Donna Green-Goodman's life. Her quest now to find a healthier way to live, it ultimately led her to a plant-based diet. And now more than 20 years, how great is that? More than 20 years into remission, she is sharing her powerful journey and what she has learned along the way so that women around the world can also lower their risk of getting breast cancer and given an ability to fight back and live a long and healthy life. With that, we welcome the ever so inspirational Donna Green-Goodman to the Exam Room Live. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You know, when somebody said you got to get Donna on the show, I was like, okay, well, let me look her up, see who it is. And then I saw your story. I was like, oh my goodness gracious, 2 decades. Like this woman is a mover and a shaker. We have to get her on. So first of all, congratulations. I am so happy for you.
Thank you so much. Diagnosed in 96, and it shook my world. And finding out a lot of the information that I did relative to diet and lifestyle change is borne out now in a lot of the studies that Neal was just talking about, actually. And I was the poster child for most of the things that he just spoke of. And to be able to be here almost 25 years later is one of the greatest things in my life.
What do you remember about the emotions of that day that you had received the diagnosis? Were you blindsided? Had there been a family history?
There was no family history of breast cancer in my family at all. I did have a history of fibrocystic breast disease and fibroid adenomas, and it had an fibroid adenoma removed, but my physician and I were watching another lump that grew and it acted the same way. So when we did a baseline mammogram as he recommended, nobody was suspicious that anything would come back. And then we started getting calls. We see something, there's some calcifications. Come on, we need to do this. So then I went and ended up having the surgery, and the doctor wanted me to wait while they were doing the labs. So about a month later is when I got the news. My husband and I were literally getting ready for the Peachtree Road Race in Atlanta. And I got the call that said that it was definitely cancer. And she wanted me to come back in so that they could do a test of the lymphatic system. And when I got that information back later, you know, this is bad, Donna. We need you to do chemotherapy, a stem cell transplant, more chemotherapy, radiation, and then get on tamoxifen. So yeah, my world was just a little shaken.
Yeah, just a little bit. I can't even begin to imagine. How was your health otherwise? I look at you today and you look so healthy, but how were you back in 1996 when you received this diagnosis?
In 96, I was fairly healthy as we understand it, but now I understand that a lot of the challenges that I was facing, I was one of those women that Neal was just talking about. As far as having problems with periods, I was told that I would not be able to have any children because I had so much trouble with my periods and my menstrual cycle. But outside of that, you know, I had been teaching at Morehouse School of Medicine and then the Office of Nutrition for the state of Georgia. And so I was pretty much living the standard things where you get a little exercise, don't eat a whole lot of junk, you know, that sort of stuff. But once the diagnosis occurred and I started to make the lifestyle changes, other things that I was experiencing that were not bad enough for me to see a physician about began to improve as well.
Right. So in that medical world, in the academic world, on top of that, you have access to all of this research. So as you're going through treatments, what were kind of some of the things that you were stumbling across?
Well, I attended Loma Linda University where the Adventist Health Study was. So some of this information I was familiar with. And that background made me make a different decision. I refused chemo and the stem cell and the tamoxifen because I understood the value of lifestyle choices to better health. What I was learning was the detail about it relative to breast cancer. And there was a study that was being done at the National Cancer Institute by Herb Pearson that really interested me about the value of plant foods in the diet, and how when you ate broccoli and watermelon and tomatoes, he was discovering that the phytochemicals inside of those foods literally would go through the bloodstream and morph out the cancer. And so I was excited about that and decided that I would do the radiation, but I was going to overhaul my lifestyle, including becoming plant-based, because I had been vegetarian all my life. I was lacto-ovo vegetarian. And so to discover the impact of animal products on the diet was what helped me to make the jump to doing a plant-based diet.
Ooh, wow. That is a big decision. So let me ask you this. I've spoken with survivors previously, and they've all expressed to me how beneficial that healthy diet was during the course of treatment. And I will never forget having one particular interview speaking with somebody who would go for group treatment. It was the same people in the same room once, twice a week, however often they were getting the chemo. And they said that while everyone else's hair began to fall out and they would get sick every single time, they didn't feel great, but they stayed so much healthier than the rest of the group. And the only thing that they could attribute that to was the fact that they were eating an exclusively plant-based diet while everybody else was continuing to chow down on things like hamburgers.
Right. I did radiation only, so I wasn't connected that way. But I spoke to a woman yesterday who's a breast cancer survivor, and she did similar things and had a better outcome than other women typically do. I was fortunate enough, though, that as I made the changes, I continued to get blood work done with my physician for her to market. And at 6 months, I did the blood work, and she said that things had gotten worse. So I was a little concerned, but I continued to do what I did. And at 9 months, I asked to see the actual blood results, the lab results. And literally what she had told me in December was a little different on the paper. And my lab results that were the markers for the growth of the cancer had continued to drop from the initial diagnosis. And so I saw that improvement. I saw weight loss. I saw my periods go from 10 days a month down to 2 days a month. Allergy reactions that I was having, that my son was having, all improved. My sex life with my husband improved. There were just so many amazing benefits beyond what I ever imagined, because I didn't go in to affect those things. I literally went in because they told me I was going to die. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything that I could to live. And the plant-based diet is the way that helped me do it. It was just absolutely amazing.
So what were those conversations? Wow. You talk about your world being shook. At this point, you've just turned this thing all the way upside down, and you're going for a second rotation of turning it upside down. That's unbelievable. But let's talk about the conversations you had with your doctor when you said, no, I really want to try aggressively with this dietary approach.
Mm-hmm.
What was their initial reaction?
My surgeon was not happy at all. I never made it to an oncologist because I decided to do lifestyle, but I did go to a radiation oncologist, and I was prescribed 6 weeks, and I did 4 of 6 weeks and then quit that because the fire inside my breast was so horrible I couldn't do it anymore. And none of them were happy with me. So today we have what we call lifestyle medicine physicians, and I sought out someone who would today be called a lifestyle medicine physician, and he took over my care. And he supported lifestyle and plant-based diet and stress management and non-drinking alcohol, all of the things that the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine Pink campaign is about. He supported, and he still tested me, but he supported me in these decisions, and he gave me resources to complete those decisions that I was making. And here I am 25 years later.
Man, it's fantastic. Do you think that really people should explore the traditional course of treatment on top of these lifestyle medicine treatments that we're talking about, the dietary improvements and things like that. Is this a case where the two kind of work hand in hand to give you the optimal outcome?
I see dietary as traditional. When we're talking about primary medicine, we talk about what people should eat and how they should eat. It's not always plant-based recommended, but diet is important. Whatever I talk to people, I recommend that they decide the best treatment that is right for them. And for me, it was radiation and lifestyle change. And if you've got questions about which treatment is best for you, do the research. The evidence is out there, and then find the healthcare team that works with you. That could be a lifestyle physician who is an oncologist, who's a radiation oncologist, a dietitian, a physical therapist, even, because so many women have side effects of the breast cancer surgery and the treatment, and there is a change in their range of motion. So having a physical therapy as part of the team, and then make the choices, because most of the lifestyle choices that I have made post my diagnosis are what doctors recommend that you do pre-diagnosis, but nobody is there showing you how to do it. And so you choose what works best for you. And I'm not talking about going to someone who is not a physician or board certified. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about medically trained professionals who you are comfortable with. And I always say to women, when you go in the store to buy a pair of shoes, you don't buy the first pair of shoes that you see unless you've tried them on before. You go until you find the one that works best for you. And that's the same thing that I recommend for women who are in the situation that I faced in 1996. Find the professional healthcare team and make the decisions that best work for you.
I mean, you have acquired so much wisdom in this nearly quarter century since your diagnosis. When did you make the decision that you wanted to help other women along in their journey as well?
As soon as I was diagnosed, what I had to really do was redesign. I'm a home economist undergrad and a public health educator master's. So this was what I did, teach people how to improve their health. And so a lot of folk were asking me for recipes and what did you do? And now I had a whole different vision of how I could help people improve their health. And I learned how to make those changes. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, which is in the deep South. And you know all of the habits and practices that we do here that contribute to poor health. And so I began to modify what I was doing to teach other people. And it went not just for breast cancer. Of course, that's where I went first, but we were talking to people who were at risk for any chronic disease, as is borne out at PCRM, and making these choices improves their health. And that's what I promised God I would do till the day that I stopped breathing.
That's phenomenal. And how receptive are people to these lifestyle changes? I mean, because I know for a lot of people, a plant-based diet, that can be like, oh my goodness gracious, I don't know about this. I'm from the South as well. And if you would have told me 10 years ago to like not eat meat, I'd have been like, I don't know what kind of hippie nonsense you're talking, but I want nothing to do with it.
Exactly. Well, what I did was, as a home economist, I used to cook food. And so I knew what Southerners like to eat. And then I would modify the recipe so that it tasted similar, so that it was the foods that we traditionally ate, but they were plant-based. And I remember doing projects with the Office of Minority Health. We did stuff in churches. I taught in college for a while, and students would come in and say, I'm taking this class because I have to graduate. You are not going to convince me to be plant-based. And by the end of the semester, after they had tasted what I did, learned how to cook it for themselves, and seen the benefit, they embraced it themselves. And that's how I recommend it. And then the people who are slow about it, I try to go where they are. If a person is diabetic and they're trying to get the blood sugars down, I'll show them the value of why they should eat these pinto beans and rice without all of the fat back in there. If a woman is a breast cancer patient like I am, I talk to her about the value of plant foods and bringing those hormones down to where they need to be. And if you're going to do it 3 days a week, that's a very good beginning. So meeting people where they are. But when they taste my Southern food, they're ready to eat it.
Oh, I have no doubt. Like, as a matter of fact, I'm ready to ask you to just box them up and ship it up my way up here in DC. I like you. You are just fantastic. You should come on all the time. You have a great website set up, Lifestyle Therapeutics. That's therapeutics with an X. Talk to me a little bit about what it is that you have going on there.
My husband is a physical therapist, and he is very interested in what is called lifestyle physical therapy as well. So when he gets a patient who is diabetic and may be experiencing neuropathy, what he likes to do is teach them the principles of healthy living as he treats them and uses hydrotherapy. And I'm the wellness coach who walks them through lifestyle changes and teaches them how to eat a plant-based diet. And we've been just amazed to see some of our patients who have made all of the choices that we recommend turn their health around. Others, it's taken a while. One gentleman actually ended up having to go on dialysis, and then he was ready to make the changes. And he's worked with his physician, his trained physician, who is telling him that if he gets the numbers down, he can come off the dialysis. And so he is backing up the number of days that he has to go per week. And those are the joys that we get to see at our clinic doing that. I've written a couple books that have recipes in them and done a cooking show that we share with our patients as well. And the big event in our clinic, we were doing weekly cooking classes, but there were people who couldn't come back out at night for whatever reason. So we moved it to once per month, and the classes before COVID were full. And then every single day that a patient comes into our clinic, our staff prepares something for them to taste that is plant-based. Today, they're getting tortillas and homemade mango salsa. And they leave with that. And many days the patient will sit in their car and eat it before they get home to their loved one, because they don't want to have to share it because they enjoy it so much.
I will give you my address as soon as we wrap up here. That is that is fantastic. On Twitter and Instagram at Still Shoutin'. No G on that, because you are the OG of beating breast cancer. Donna Green-Goodman, thank you so very much. You are just, like I said, just fantastic. Congratulations on all of your success, and thank you for sharing your journey and everything that you've learned with so many women and impacting their lives as well.
Thank you so much.
All right. She is the best. Go check her out. Lifestyle Therapeutics with an X. Now, 1 out of 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime. So please join us for our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign this month of October. We've put together our 4-pronged approach, a lot of which you've actually heard about on the show today. These are 4 steps that you can take to lower your risk of breast cancer starting right now. So head over to letsbeatbreastcancer.org. You can learn those 4 steps and take the pledge to follow them. You see the steps right there on your screen. And plus, when you take that pledge, you will receive the Breast Ever e-cookbook that is just packed with cancer-fighting recipes that will get you going on your healthier path today. And that e-cookbook, completely free. And all of the recipes, 100% delicious. I'm not sure if Donna's recipes are in there or not, but they are pretty daggone tasty. I can tell you that from experience. So head over to letsbeatbreastcancer.org to take that pledge, get that free e-cookbook today. And I also want to say a big thank you to 22 Days Nutrition for their support of our Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign this year. And so let me tell you also a little bit about what's coming up tomorrow, right back here on Facebook and YouTube at 2:00 Eastern time. You can join Dr. Vanita Rahman and dietitian Lee Crosby. You know her as the Fiber Queen. They're going to be teaming up for a live breast health Q&A on the Physicians Committee's Facebook page and YouTube channel beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Plus, here's the really super exciting thing. We will also have the world premiere of our Let's Beat Breast Cancer PSA. I call it a spot. You know, PSA, that seems kind of boring. This is anything but. This is a Let's Beat Breast Cancer spot. And look who's in that. You see Dr. Christy Funk, Jasmine Leva from Invisible Vegan, that great documentary. Then you see Ted Danson and his wife, Mary Steenburgen. They're there, plus actress Alicia Silverstone, all part of this incredible Let's Beat Breast Cancer spot that we have put together. So we're going to be having the world premiere for that right back here at 2:00 Eastern tomorrow, plus the breast health Q&A, all live. Set your calendars. Don't you dare miss it. Put a reminder in your phone right now. But for today, that is all the time that we have. So I want to say thank you once again to Donna Green-Goodman for joining us and sharing her incredible story and all of that inspiration. She just oozes positivity. Love it so much. And also a huge thank you to the crew behind the scenes that makes this show possible. And of course to you, my exam roomie who is watching us right now. We could not do the show without you either. On behalf of Dr. Neal Barnard and everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Until tomorrow, stay safe, take a stand, and keep it plant-based.